Hi, I'm Linda Augsburg, Editorial Content Chief for American Patchwork and Quilting. If you're familiar with our 1 Million Pillowcase Challenge, you'll know that we have pillowcases in all different designs, but we had some demand for travel-size pillowcases, so we wanted to provide a pattern that would work for those people who needed a travel-size pattern. Now this method of construction is a little different because the roll-it-up method doesn't work with such a small cuff. To make a travel-size pillowcase, which fits a 16 by 12 pillow and finishes out at 13 by 18, you'll need 1/4 of a yard for the cuff, 1/8 of a yard for the trim, and then 1/2 a yard for the body. For the instructions for this pillowcase, you can go to allpeoplequilt.com/million pillowcases. Now let's get started. The cutting dimensions for this pillowcase are: the band is cut at 6 by 27, the piping is cut at 2 by 27, and the pillowcase body is cut at 16.5 by 27. So the first step is to fold your band piece right sides together and short edges aligned. You're going to sew those short edges with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Press them open. You can just finger press that even. And then you're going to fold that band wrong sides together. And give that band a good pressing. You want to have your raw edges, your long raw edges even. You've made a tube now, and you're going to press the folded edge. Next, you're going to fold the 2-inch strip in half wrong sides together, so it's long and 1 inch by 27 inches. Then you're going to baste it to the top edge of your pillowcase body. And a basting stitch is just a longer stitch. My typical stitch is 2.5, so I'm going to go up to 3.5. And I'm just going to baste along this edge at about 1/4 of an inch. I want to hold that band in place, but I also don't want the stitching to show when I sew the whole pillowcase together. Now, I'll fold that pillowcase body together. So now we're going to sew the side seam and the bottom seam of this pillowcase. If you have a serger, this is a great place to use it because it finishes off that seam nicely. Otherwise, I'm going to sew this with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I might go back and zigzag that edge so that I'm sure it doesn't ravel as it's being used. So now that you've sewn your side seam and your bottom seam, you're going to turn the pillowcase body right side out. And then you're going to slip the cuff or the band over the body so that that piping is sandwiched in between. You just want to make sure you've got all your raw edges even. Then you're going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You're going to sew the band to the pillowcase. Now, if your machine has a free arm option, you'll want to slide that off and make yourself into the free arm mode. And that just lets you slide that whole pillowcase on. This is great for when you have to hem sleeves or pant legs, or pillowcases like this, where you want to be able to get that on without having it pulled too tight. So we're just going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, sewing that cuff or band to the pillowcase. We're going to go all the way around that tube. Just making sure you've got all 3 edges aligned. This is another place where you might want to go around a second time. If you had a serger, it would be really handy to finish that seam off with a serger. Or if you don't, you can always do an overlock or a zigzag stitch on your regular machine, just to, again, encapsulate that seam. It helps prevent raveling. To finish your pillowcase, you're going to turn your band right side out, pressing your seam allowance toward the body of the pillowcase. You want to make sure all that seam allowance is going this direction and then top stitch right along that edge. And that's going to give you a nice finished pillowcase. So that's all there is to it. We know that there are so many charities out there that do require these travel-size pillowcases, so being able to donate them to the charities that need them is really important to the people who are involved in the Million Pillowcase Challenge. Again, for the instructions, go to allpeoplequilt.com/million pillowcases and look for the instructions for the travel pillowcase. Thanks for sewing with us.